Oh. Did you say somebody said we're live?
A little icon said you're live. I think we might want to refresh.
Oh, God. I don't know. Can anybody hear us? Is that...
I can hear you, and it says that we've been live for a minute and a half. Hey!
Hey, there we go. We got an error message because I was trying to go live. Apparently, X said no. X said you can't go live on X anymore. So I was trying to do that. And so what StreamYard did, apparently, was it said, okay, error. So you can't do anything on your screen, but also you're live on YouTube right now. So it's cute, you know. It's a cute way to handle that situation. Wasn't a huge fan of it.
Welcome to Red Wings Rant, where tirades against X finally have a home. All right, suck it, X. Welcome aboard, Jared, Justin, GLJ. What up?
Yeah, sorry about the technical difficulties. Let's mentally reset here. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Red Wings Rant, where tirades and impassioned pleas for your Detroit Red Wings finally have a home. All right, let's do it. Mike, we're gonna. I can't believe this is the episode where that happened. Because we do have to end quickly.
No.
We're gonna try and be out of here at 7:30. And we're
ambitious.
We got 20. We got 25 minutes. All right. So, Red Wings sign Michael Brandsegg-Nygard. Ambitious. We can do it. Mike, this is good news. This is a couple of draft picks in a row where the Red Wings are going to sign their first round pick right from the get-go, which was not happening earlier in the Yzer plan. So, I believe that while most of these moves in the Yzer plan come attached with don't think too much about it, or like, you know, somebody goes to arbitration, you're like, it doesn't really mean anything. I do think this is significant just for the fact that we're moving things along here, right? And we're not playing that game of holding on to the ELC to get like that extra year or any of that garbage. No. Red Wings drafted this guy, and we all knew the reason why was because he had a good track record playing against adults. So we might not need as much time. So good news here, Mike. I don't know if you have any thoughts around that.
Mostly what I've read about him is who does the is it Wheeler on the Athletic?
Yeah,
he had his top 100 prospects. Thank you, Jared. Yeah, it's Nygard. No other way. Don't even try.
I don't even know.
Don't even try.
How do you make a joke about it?
That's it. That's all you get. You don't want to get Kyle gassed and your whole tour canceled. But anyway, everything we've he cracked the top 50 for includes recently drafted players, so not prospects that are on the horizon. Just exciting guys, and the description of him was pretty complimentary. A can't miss 200-foot prospect. So a lot of nice things to say about him on the Athletic. Maybe we'll get to enjoy him in 2 to 3 years.
Dan B, you genius. We got Johnny Burgers now and Michael Eggs. Burger and eggs. How about we do the what's the burger called? The hangover burger, right?
Oh yeah,
that's
we put a
pretty-
fried egg on top.
Yeah. Now, have you had the fried egg plus the hash brown brick, like from McDonald's?
I had that at
Hopcat?
no, not I had it at Kasana, the restaurant from an episode of The Bear.
Oh, was I
had,
there with you?
Yeah, I think you were there, Matt. Remember?
Really?
Yeah. With GLJ saying Nygard, Mr. Eggs himself.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
Well, I'm trying to hammer it home now for me because I'm the king of pronouncing NHL players' names wrong.
So one thing that Brandsegg is not Michael Brandsegg. He's not a right shot top 4 defenseman, which the Athletic listed. We were going to talk about this last week, but we ran out of time. And you know what? It's fitting that this will be our one topic this week because would have just been maybe another 30 minutes to talk about. So we're going to try and knock it out here. The Athletic explained a top need for each team in the NHL. And they stopped at the Red Wings and started talking about, they added a power play quarterback in Erik Gustafsson to replace Shane Gostisbehere. Indicated it will try him on the right side. But he's more of an offensively tilted player who's best cast on the third pair. Yay! That likely means that the Red Wings will once again turn to Jeff Petrie in the top 4 behind Moritz Seider. There was some hope Detroit could find someone to help take the pressure off Seider, who played the toughest minutes in the NHL last season, but with limited cap space. Once accounting for Seider and Lucas Raymond extensions, it looks like this is the group the Red Wings will take into this season. Yay! So, with all that good news, and of course, this is last week. We spent all week kind of sharing.
This was can I say this was the most one of the more surprising transactions or non-transactions for the Red Wings because it really sounded like Steve. As far as getting his offseason in control, priority 1 was Patrick Kane, and it sounded like priority 2 was Shane Gostisbehere. This sounded like a guy Steve definitely wanted to retain. Yeah. So yeah, I know you have some candidates coming up for us to try and replace him, but yeah, this is a guy they really valued. So I don't think Gustafsson is. I mean, he was a defenseman who was also signed, but I don't think we actually believe he's going to be the point producer that Gostisbehere's, shown himself to be. So what I'm hoping is that Steve talked himself out of re-signing the Ghost Bear because maybe he's got something a little better up his sleeve.
Oh, yeah. And we're still, right, like we've talked about it these last couple episodes, right? There's still goaltenders on the team that we're hoping we can use as a piece to get rid of. We're starting to get, Mike, a little bit of a what do you call it? Just we're getting stacked negatively. Too many guys in one spot, right? Like you draft Casper, you draft Danielson, you draft Brandsegg-Nygard. Kind of getting a lot of guys going up the middle, and you also have a couple guys that are inked for a little bit here, so you might have some potential to move one of these guys to really improve a space on the team that needs some improving now. And we're gonna go through some of those guys. I did want to call out too. Dan shared in the what is this? This isn't Slack. What's it called? What's the other thing? Discord. Dan was shared in the Discord. You guys come join the Discord. Oh my God, what are you opening? Jeez, OP.
It might be a Pop-Tart.
It sounds like my house at 11 o'clock at night when my cat finds a piece of plastic left over from the ranch bottle, and he's just got it run around.
It may or may not have been a Pop-Tart. I'm so sorry.
That was so goddamn.
So what happened was I didn't hit the mute button like I thought I did. So now everybody knows I'm having a cherry Pop-Tart. But man, we got some defense. This is an episode for the ages.
Yeah, I just wanted to read what Dan shared from Erik Duhatschek on The Athletic. So this is this is kind of funny. This is a Duhatschek article shared by Dan, and he's quoting Patrick S. Lots of moves, but ultimately you don't believe it will amount to much on ice change. And then Duhacek goes on to explain, as somebody who's done very little this offseason, it has to be Detroit. The expectation there was be that any improvement that happens next year comes from within. Tarasenko essentially replaced David Perron on the payroll. Duhacek says, I'd rather have Perron. Gustafsson replaced Shane Gostisbehere, and he goes on to say, I'd rather have Gostisbehere. So it's just one sentiment, and I've been listening to a new podcast as well. I wanted to shout out. It's called What Chaos. They went through today all the teams that were in the East battle this past season and ranked them as the team that will be that'll take advantage of that spot again and move up and win a playoff spot. I will let you guys know. They picked us to be the last place team out of all those teams because so far we had no improvement. And yeah, it didn't go great. They basically talked about they don't love Andrew Kopp. They don't love JT Compher. One injury, which let's remind everybody how lucky the Red Wings were injury-wise last season, even with taking the hit of Dylan Larkin. But that one hit was absolutely devastating. So there's not a ton of depth unless something like we talked about last week, Mike.
May I push back?
You may. I would just say to finish this off, unless something surprising happens like Nate Danielson, where it's just out of nowhere, we have something to count on that we right now don't see. But go ahead, Mike.
Two things directionally correct. Pointed out Nygard is a winger, not a center. So we actually do have one wing that we've drafted. And I got so focused on that, I totally forgot what I was going to say. Yep.
Well, that's great.
What were you saying a minute ago?
We could jump into well, we were talking about I just realized I needed to do our promos in this middle of the short episode, but guess what? You guys are lucky. I'm gonna have to edit it in because they didn't upload into our
That's the
stream.
best way since we've got limited time.
No, this could not have been more technically difficult for me to handle today. So we'll just jump into the conversation. Mike, let's take a look at some right side defensemen. And I tried to do this by teams that I think, speaking of that podcast I just talked about, they were talking about teams that were in that playoff bubble and which teams have that potential to fall. And do they have some players on their team that we could maybe take a peek at on the right side? So, of course, who did I take a look at? I took a look at the Washington Capitals, who added Jacob Chikrin. Who else didn't they add somebody else? Oh, yeah. And then they signed Matt Roy, who I would have, oh, my God. That was the guy I had my finger at. That was like my Damon Severson from the year prior. But Matt Roy.
Oh, yeah. Pour one out.
Would have been that guy for me. But I still think, and of course we're talking about like all these issues with the cap, I still think there is a possibility here. Just an interesting name, not like the save the franchise name, but definitely the better than bench. Well, I guess, yeah, they might run bench out on the right side too with some injuries, but better than Jeff Petrie. Now, I threw up Karlsson up here, but I also threw up Trevor Van Riemsdyk, and that's kind of where I wanted the conversation to go. And I'm gonna pull up specifically Trevor here, who graded out as a projected WAR of 91%. And at a $3 million cap hit, that ain't nothing to sneeze at. This is a guy who played on a team that was focused on one thing and one thing alone, despite making the playoffs. And that is, of course, getting Alexander Ovechkin opportunities on the power play. So to see a guy who is so successful when it was 5-on-5 defensively, and to see a guy who could still add a little bit offensively, like bringing to the table some pretty good minutes. And of course, you could take a look here. Not going to be those first pair minutes. That's fine. Those are going to Sider. But Mike, for once, we could target a guy that the season prior wasn't getting third pair minutes. What? No way. So yeah, a guy that was relied on, maybe not for the toughest minutes, but it's still out there as a second pair defenseman, taking some pretty tough minutes on himself. He is going to be that right side solution. He can't quite finish. Mike, so this is going to add to some of our expected troubles here, where we brought in so many guys the year prior to finish. Gostisbehere sprung, they're gone. So we wouldn't necessarily be replacing that ability to finish, but we would be, I would say, upgrading on the Jeff Petrie side of things.
No, Matt, there's a couple things going in his favor about him being a future Red Wing. He's about to enter his mid-30s, right in our wheelhouse. He is a former Chicago Blackhawk who did overlap with Patrick Kane. And he's taller than 5'11", which outside of Axel, that's how we kind of like our defensemen. This would be a wild pivot from the Ghost Bear, who likes scoring points. Trevor is averse to putting pucks in net. He's more of a kind of defensive defenseman. He did just Matt, in the 22-23 season, set his season high in goals at 7. But for the most part, he scored 1, 1, 1, 3, 3, 5, 3, and 0. So not a big goal getter there, not a big assist man, but maybe this team doesn't really need a defenseman scoring points, because it didn't lead to as many wins last year. I mean, our power play was better with the Ghost Bear, but maybe a pivot philosophically to kind of balance out, the scales for Yzerman. Let in a lot fewer, even though you don't maybe score as many as you'd like.
Yeah, and I would say too, like, at some point we've got to put Moritz Seider in this space to succeed, and he should be put in more situations where he can be the offensive guy. If he's going to be a first pair defenseman, the offensive guy he needs to be. And that doesn't mean you bring in Trevor Van Riemsdyk to do that. No, you bring him in to take over those other minutes. So that's easy as pie to kind of look at this, kind of hone in on the Capitals as some huge potential. If you take a look at some of the guys they brought in, of course, I only have the defensive side, but PLD, one of those names that was brought in. It just looks like they're taking a lot of chances right now, and you have an aging Alexander Ovechkin. Clearly, the goals here, again, are just to get Ovechkin over that goal record. So would they be willing to play around with us? I think so. I mean, some of the other options on this roster, you'd think like Washington, they took that chance on Ethan Bear. That might be a name that they want to get rid of compared to Trevor, because hell, they don't want to purposefully be worse. But they did bring in Matt Roy, right? And they already had John Karlsson, who's going to be taking those first pair minutes. So you're dropping down Trevor down to the third pair potentially. It just seems like this guy will be on the chopping block, and there's some names, of course, on our roster that we can count as like some expendable pieces. So this should be something, I think, on our radar.
Wow!
My God!
This is the most disruptive episode we've had in a long time. And I mean, I think the only pushback that the Capitals would give is like, well, Trevor is kind of affordable for us. They are, I think, as of if you guys are also getting used to Puckpedia, $10 million over the cap. So they might need to make a little more headway than just moving a guy who's making $3 million. So my God, Matt, maybe Karlsson's available.
Yeah, the next couple names that we're gonna, well, yeah, that's very true. I just don't know, like on the aging side of Karlsson, like it doesn't hurt. And now you're, if you can bring in Karlsson, you're kind of talking more about that.
Believe me, I'm not dying to get him. He's kind of on the same list as, like Oshie would help them out if we took on that contract. But we're helping the Capitals. Ideally, I'd like to help the Red Wings.
Right. I was just going to make the argument that he might be the perfect, maybe closer to replacement for Gostisbehere than Trevor was. If you want to try and duplicate what the team was last year, that would be the argument, right? Moving along, I took a look at Edmonton because they have to drop somebody. The only thing was I can't really figure any of this out. Like with Edmonton, like they're probably gonna get rid of a Cody Ceci. It's just that I don't know if we really want him. So and I know they're also going to want to try and get rid of Darnell Nurse. Like, that's a huge chunk of contract, but nobody's going to want to take that. Obviously, like, when you take a look at Edmonton's roster, like, Evan Bouchard is the guy that you want. And he showed up in the playoffs. He was everything that Edmonton needed to, like, take them over the hump. It would just be one of those, I think, game-changing trades, right? Like, this would be something where now we're not just we're not just trying to upgrade Jeff Petrie. We are now putting a guy in place to be a part of our core going forward. And we'll be that team where the Lightning, I think you could have argued during their Stanley Cup years, were like strong on the left side. And then they had great complementary pieces on the right side. Maybe we'll be strong on the right side, going Seider, Bouchard, and we'll have amazing complementary pieces on the left side. The only thing is with that too, like, that's where you're talking about maybe Pelika is on the chopping block and you're bringing in an established right side defenseman like Evan Bouchard. I know nobody wants to have that conversation, but that's kind of where my head was at right now. Like, could you roll the dice? But you'd have to have a really bad start for Edmonton. But this is your Stanley Cup pick, right? Like,
let's and I don't know if we're going to have time to touch on this, but some of the trade offers that we'd want to put out there, I don't know how feasible this one is. I understand the like the thinking behind it. You know, Brian Burton, welcome to the show. I don't think we've had a Brian Burton comment. So welcome. Glad you're here. Just saying Petrie and Hall. So basically he's just trying to empty out that cap sheet a little bit and then sacrificing a high pick. I think you could feasibly throw in Petrie and Hall plus high pick, but it would also include, you know, a prospect that we like, which is what you were kind of alluding to with Axel. You know, basically any prospect outside of Edmonton is probably on the table for the defenseman that we are interested in, you know, making big moves for.
Yeah, and it, like what Brian's thrown out there too, like I wouldn't even put it past Washington to jump in on that with all the trades that they've done so far this offseason. So like before you might be looking at that as like, you know, one of those where it's like, yes, we would love to get rid of the garbage, but Washington seems to be taking on a lot of garbage right now. Dan throwing out there that Bouchard guy is pretty good. I think Dan teasing us a little bit. Too bad we don't have a guy like him. Enjoy playing in Europe, Sedina. And then angry emoji. GLJ, Washington is pretty full in the D room already, though. Great point. Like that's one of the reasons like you think you're going to be attacking what they've got going on the depth chart is because they're going to need to make some room. So great point by GLJ. Probably not going to be wanting to take on any more defensemen, but we do have some guys. I don't know. Do they want a Berggren? They want to give that a shot. And then we can get right side D. I mean, it's essentially we're having this conversation, right? Like we've plotted out what the top six is. So Mike, you've made this wonderful point the last couple of seasons where you're like, guys, you better hope that you're okay getting rid of some bottom four defensemen. Like if we start drawing the line at like Seider and Edmondson, and then Pelika, and we've already dropped Wallman, you're like, those kind of guys are on the chopping block. Like, absolutely, guys on the bottom four of your defensive pairs, you should be kind of okay dropping. But again, talking about Berggren, guys in those bottom six, you should be pretty okay thinking about dropping those guys.
Yeah. And I know there's also kind of a thread that snakes its way through our comments. Almost every episode is the concern that Seider and Lucas still have not re-signed. But Berggren is also kind of floating in limbo. And I kind of feel like those are all related because Berggren is probably part of some sort of trade because it doesn't look like he's quite tickled Yzerman's fancy in his tenure as a Red Wing prospect.
For sure.
So maybe just waiting for that to kind of shake out. Draft pick Berggren, defenseman, currently on the NHL roster to make money work for a defenseman upgrade. I don't think it's an accident that all of those things are still kind of up in the air right now. And Dan B, God damn it, going for a comment of the episode here. Trade Scooble for a right shot D man. God bless. That's a good one. But I think you had a couple more slides for us here.
Yeah, we'll jump
into
Colorado.
Colorado, yeah, they're currently, I think, about $1.5 million over the cap. So they would have to do a little Michael Scott fancy financial footwork to get back under the threshold. So obviously they probably want to get rid of Makar.
Yeah, for sure. That's what we're going after here. They want to clear that $9 million in cap space.
You have a realistic name for us, correct?
Yeah, and I bring up these depth charts too because we are talking about, like think again, like should Colorado, if they're going to be clearing space, they're going to start talking about second pair D and lower, your bottom six, and that's where we're headed. But it's still doesn't make a ton. Yeah,
you are looking at the Manson. Yeah, I didn't even read ahead. I'm proud of myself for that.
Well, for sure. I think it's a good target, to help. We're helping Colorado out here again, helping them make some space because they're going to have to do that. But again, this is going to be a guy who, when he's on the ice, he is put in place to succeed. And you could see that here with these numbers. I did try to find guys too that were getting considerable minutes. So again, finding a guy that's getting those top 4 minutes so that some of the defensive responsibility can fall on Josh would give more offensive opportunity to Mo Seider. So that's kind of where the head's at. And you also had to find a guy who's been successful when it comes to preventing chances on net and those quality chances as well. So that expected goals per 60, Corsi against per 60, obviously miles better than Jeff Petrie, but in the top half of the league.
Can I push back on this move?
Go for it.
I don't want anything to do with ex-Colorado players. And it's not for the Claude Lemieux reasons that you think. I feel like we were burned by JT Compher's J-Fresh numbers because he was on a very successful hockey team. And I'm a little afraid that Manson is also kind of, everything that Colorado touches turns to gold.
Yeah.
So this maybe is not a guy that I would want to jump all over. But part of this episode, part of the reason we're even, having this discussion of some options, it's something Brian Mcavoy, welcome Brian, was saying. It's a shame Trouba shut down the trade to Detroit. So if that trade had been accepted, we probably wouldn't even be going down this rabbit hole. But Brian continues, having a complete maniac on the team would help deter players from going after Larkin. Yeah, Brian, his possession numbers on the ice are really pretty rough. But yeah, I agree, having that kind of psycho, that kind of presence, that kind of force on the bench, it's kind of the, eyeball test that it would make the team a little bit better. New York Rangers fans would agree that he would be better as a Red Wing as well.
Especially if the Rangers were going to eat a bunch of that cap too. That would have made that really tempting.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't hate Manson. I'm just scared now that I feel like Comfort has kind of made me maybe want to shop around and go to a different retailer.
So continuing the trend for the Vegas Golden Knights here, another team. Forget how far are they?
Vegas is currently about a little over $3.5 million over the cap, so they also must do something before the season starts.
And that something is probably to put somebody on long-term injured reserve.
Right.
But let's say that's not the case. I've heard the argument that Vegas's bill has come to the table. And by that, the sports writer, who I believe was from The Athletic, their beat writer, actually. Who cares? Beat writer for the Vegas Golden Knights. They've traded away so many draft picks, so many prospects. They've got this empty prospect pool right now. They just lost, a couple of high-profile names from their roster. Looking at
talking about Jesse Granger.
Yes, Jesse Granger. Yeah.
Okay.
But losing like your Marchessaults, is it the sign that things are coming to an end for Vegas and they need to kind of like reset? I mean, it's a lot of years that you've been challenging for the cup and getting your playoff shots, right? That's like five or six seasons. Even when they're missing the playoffs, it's one of those like, oh, just wait till next season. Like, that's what you're aiming for as a franchise. And if they're ready to hit the reset button, I think there's a couple names on here, but the one I would take a peek at for, I don't know, the longest is going to be Shea Theodore. So the left shot, but he plays on the right side for Vegas. He's gotten top pair minutes, but of course that's mainly because of injuries over in Vegas. But this is your name where you're getting your Shane Goss to spare back, and probably, I would say, an upgrade too. This is a guy I would love to have. I love watching him for the Vegas Golden Knights. As a defenseman, he brings some danger to the blue line as opposed to just throwing the puck on net. You're actually scared to see this thing leave his stick. And you could see here too on the JFresh, he's in that top 90% for defensemen. That blue line on the second graph on the right-hand side. If you guys aren't watching on YouTube, just trust me. But essentially, this is the guy that's going to make that difference for you. Those high finishing numbers, top 1% in assists in the NHL, your top 7% in even strength offense, something that the Red Wings have lacked severely. So this is one of those things where it's challenging to see that this is going to make more room for Moritz Seider, but could be one of those things where maybe we start to see what Moritz Seider is meant for, and we give more opportunity to somebody else to bring some offense when it's 5-on-5. Maybe that's what we're going to find out.
He's an interesting player for sure. He has had some boo-boos the past couple seasons, so maybe that makes him a little more attainable. Like last year, he only played 47 games, and my God, he had 42 points in 47 games, man. He was rocking and rolling. Year before that, also some boo-boos, but 41 points in 55 games. And then the year before that was when he had probably one of his more, healthy seasons. He put up 52 and 78. So this is a guy who would help kind of replicate points like Gostisbehere, but I'm getting those tinglies, the Robbie Fabry tinglies. Like, oh man, I hope this guy can stay on the ice. So,
well, we have one more that seems like kind of legit because he's on the market.
Yeah, before you hit that one, let's hit a few comments too.
Brand new throws out there. Can the Wings just LTIR Petrie and Hall? Like, there's got to be something you can do.
There's got to be some kind of contingency plan. But we also had Brian coming back on Trouba. No delusions here on Trouba. We didn't think you had any. No, it's I think you just weren't here for that episode. We just wanted to touch base on it. But Trouba being a great player, but yeah, if salary was retained and a role in the second, third would be fine. We agree.
Oh yeah, totally.
Then Brian throwing in Theodore doesn't really improve defense. He's a scorer. Yeah, absolutely. But outside of Edvinsson suddenly developing very quickly, I don't know if we really have a scoring defense. I'm not ready to call Gustafsson that. Maybe Seider. It just feels like he's on the ice enough that he gets points. I don't know if he's he's quite yet like a point getting defenseman. Go ahead. Feel free to push back on that.
We might find out. That's exactly what I said. You might be bringing in Shea because maybe we've decided what Moritz Seider is. Just throwing that out there. Trying to be there's a possibility, right? That's not a bad thing. Not a bad thing at all. You gotta have those guys on your team to win some Stanley Cups.
Jared saying after our comments, McCarty waiting in the parking garage with a 9-iron. This, Matt, I'm glad you saved this for last because this is kind of the big enchilada.
It's this not one. Last. I got more.
Oh, this
we're gonna have to run through these quicker. But Mike, tell the good people on the pod and listening to the podcast who you're licking your lips. Yeah,
from Florida. Man, what a penalty killer! What a finisher!
Overtime,
just a professional right side defenseman, and I think the only beef is I don't know if Florida wants to make a deal with us. As sexy as we could make that deal with first rounders, burgers, and a replacement defenseman.
Oh, Derek Hand thrown out there. Just got here. What about Mackenzie Weegar? All right. Let's run through everyone else. I got him queued up. Man. Got you. All right. Now, this one's interesting. Calgary's still going to be cleaning the cupboards. So we're going to run through these names a little bit faster just to kind of I don't think this is a possibility because we're talking 7 years, $6 million. So you are bringing a guy onto this team to be on your core. But look at these numbers, Mike. Mackenzie Weegar can make that difference. And you know what? He trended downward when the Calgary Flames decided they were going to suck butt. So I'm not gonna lean too much onto that. But over a 3-year period, you saw a very solid player who's bringing great hockey on the offensive side of the ice, tremendously great numbers on the defensive side of the ice. He can play power play minutes. He can play penalty kill minutes. His finishing is high. Those goals are through the roof. Everything that Weegar could bring to this team is, I mean, you're talking about the all-around defenseman. And if you're bringing this over to the Detroit Red Wings, you are upgrading that Decor significantly. And that $6.3 million for 7 years, dude, I'd jump all over that. And that conversation too, you're even talking about, like, he does play right side as well, like playing that same game we're playing with Shea. However, you could play that game where now you've got a new partner for Cider who lost Jake Wallman, and I don't trust Ben Sherratt with anything. So that could be part of this trade as well. And if you have just this absolute banger of a top line, and you can move the Ben Sherratts down a pair, and you could give Simon Edmondson some space here, and you just know, like, now your tough minutes for sure getting on the first pair, but you have your line that can bring some offense to the ice, and you could start to balance it out in different ways. Now that's on Lalone, but I absolutely love this call, Derek Hand, and that's why I made a slide.
I like the Flames kind of being the Oakland A's of hockey, where it's just like, hey, trade deadline, we're selling. What do you want? And, making the team up for grabs. The one point that was brought up was people were a little concerned about the cap hit, but lest we forget, we're sitting at about 19 mil right now. And, probably about 16 mil of that is going to Cider and Lucas. So you figure about 3 mil next year. We're still projected to be at 38. So we take out that 16 for our two big boys. Still looking at $22 million because that cap sheet is really getting cleaned up. So, I mean, you could definitely fit Weegar in there.
This is that time to bring out a player like that. I think maybe you could even suffer. Maybe we're having a tough conversation. But yeah, Calgary's in this space too, where they're going to take on some stuff. If you can give them some prospects, they will absolutely do that. And you just have to juice the wheels a little bit, make some room, get rid of Andrew Kopp. I know you guys will be devastated. Get him out of here. Get JT Compher out of here. But pay a higher price. But you have a guy now with your defensive core, and now you're talking about a first pair of potentially Cider Weegar. You have potentially your second pair is going to be Edvinsson Weegar. Either way, you've just tremendously upgraded this Decor, and it would be so far beyond like the struggle of the salary cap for me in my head. I would just make it work if that conversation started. And
I mean,
you got to remember,
it's a slight. Oh, go ahead.
Cap's about to go up to 100 mil too, so you're going to have a lot more space, and that $6 million cap hit is going to feel like nothing by year 5, 6, and 7.
And I mean, the trade-off would just be Mata and Petrie, who combined make almost $6 million. So their contracts are up after this season. The cap's going up. That'd be a pretty impressive acquisition.
Now, I'd have to confess, I haven't had a chance to check and see if anything's changed, but I'm pretty sure these are your free agents still available right now. You guys tell me, but this is what Puckpedia pulled up for me. I just don't think there's anything exciting here. So I don't even want to go through this list because really I'm 10 minutes over when I said I would end this. So I just want to throw out there, let's make Pittsburgh hold on to some cap. We'll think about taking Erik Karlsson because why not? There's your offense right there. Mike, Charlie McAvoy, maybe Boston takes that step back. Again, you got to take him on for 6 years.
Wow.
Probably not so great.
These are some pie-in-the-sky dreams here. Yeah, but go ahead.
26. Why not make some of these plays? Get rid of some of these prospects. Let's take on some big money contracts. Mackenzie Weegar was going to be part of this discussion. You know what? That's a mistake. I don't mean to talk about Rasmus Dahlin.
He's not going anywhere, man.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Last one who absolutely is going to be a loss for the Islanders, who are still, again, nickel and diming those opportunities to find, make it into the playoffs and lose to the Carolina Hurricanes in the first round. Noah Dobson. This is the guy I think is going to be like that shot for shot replacement of Gostisbehere. He's a little bit younger. You are going to have to pay him next year, but you got to worry about him for 1 year. But you're bringing in your offense, but he does get some penalty kill minutes. It's just on the defensive side, because there's been some struggles too. Don't blame it all on Noah Dobson. The Islanders aren't exactly perfect, but They ask him to bring offense, and he does. So this is absolutely affordable. This is one of those where it's, if things start to turn for the Islanders, I would come a knocking, and I think that is it. Yeah, that's my last slide. I love that I slid this there. Look, this is, I know why I put this in here.
Yeah, because I don't understand. Yeah.
Buffalo might suck ass again to open the gates. Like, what are we gonna do here, Buffalo? You're just gonna hang on to Rasmus Dahlin, right? No, trade him over to Detroit. I remember I put this in here and I took it out, but the reason I first put this in here was just like, Buffalo's probably gonna suck ass, so why don't you bring in a core piece of your defense? But I know, the likelihood of that is,
I think with this,
less than.
I think what this discussion
0
kind of morphs into, looking at all these guys, who can you realistically get? God bless. I can't believe I'm going to say this. For Axel Berggren, first-round pick. And I don't know. I guess, like, I want to throw in Petrie because I know that's kind of the hot name money-wise. But, I don't know if he offsets enough in the trade. But is that enough? Is that a good starting point? Axel Berggren, first-round pick, and then NHL defenseman.
I think for a lot of these names, you might have to add a pick for some of the, more core side of things, like Calgary, Pittsburgh. They're starting their rebuilds, or they're going to see what they can do. Pittsburgh's doing this crazy thing of hanging on to their superstars until their dying breath. What kind of moron GM would do that? But that's gonna be an interesting thing to dissect for Pittsburgh over the years. But I'm sure they're gonna want more like the Berggren style prospect, and kind of the same thing, for Boston too. They're gonna want to see if they can just retool. Noah's one of those guys where you don't have to ask too much, but you are upgrading over Jeff Petrie for sure, and you're also not reliant on Gustafsson, who. I get it. I know why we brought him in. I know we can call him the Gostisbehere replacement. I don't like how the national perspective of his abilities. It does not excite me for this upcoming season at all. Not that Noah Dobson is going to change the outlook, but he can certainly upgrade what you've got right now.
He's a pretty significant point scorer too. He did drop 70 this season. That's pretty nuts. He'd be like number 2 or 3 for the Red Wings. So he'd be a really, really huge get. I guess that's the guy I would maybe entertain the idea of throwing Axel into a trade for.
The other one too, this is where I drop a load. I would, I would drop a load, but I would give Calgary quite a bit here for Mackenzie Weegar. This is going to be something where if Calgary really wants to hit the reset button, I don't think you sign this lengthy of a contract and then decide to ship him out. But he is 30. Calgary's playing this game of resetting again, so it's got to be a part of the conversation. And I think you're upgrading this team right now. And again, that $6 million cap hit. It's going to feel like nothing in year 5, 6, and 7.
Are you confident that Yzerman would trade for any of these guys and give up his beloved draft picks, or put out, $750K for Klingberg?
Look, he finally didn't do only. I guess he still kind of did free agency. I just wasn't as angry this year as I was last year. But when he says he wants to build through the draft, I think if you look back at the years with Tampa, he built his team through trades of his draft picks. I'm pretty sure he's the guy who drafted Tony DeAngelo. Slater Coco is a guy who barely played any minutes for the Lightning, but then when it was time to upgrade, he was throwing his prospects here, there, and everywhere to try and upgrade his team. So looking at that history, that's really you don't I'm going to decide to draft Victor Hedman, which I can't remember if that was inside or outside of the Yzerman years with the Lightning. I think it might have been outside, but either way, he built that defense through trades. That's really how he got that. He got that done. So we've seen the experience. We've seen him he solidified that defense through trades. He's got the experience. I think that's where the Red Wings are getting to. They're getting to that point. If you count Edmondson and Seider as pieces of that core, He might not exactly think like Pellikka is the perfect fit. He might think Seider comes down and Pellikka is going to be on your first pair and he's going to be winning, Norris trophies because he leads the all defensemen in points or whatever. But I think there's a lot of possibility here. I got to run. I am way over. I said a half hour. We're at 47 minutes. Guys, sorry, we're not going to read any comments. I just got to go. Appreciate everybody jumping aboard right at 7. We'll see you guys. We have some fun shows actually planned for the off season here, unless we get a Seider and Raymond signing. Mike and I have some fun ideas.
You promised us a slide that you had a trade that was Seider for Zegras. Is that no longer? Are we saving that for next week?
Yeah, we'll talk about that next week. All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye. Matt really wants Zegras.